Hi, this is Shelly Fryer. Today is December 22nd, 2017. We're in Allen, Texas, at Jana's house. We just had a wonderful day of baking cookies and got to spend some time with my dad. And so we've been going through boxes of pictures that have been sitting in my garage for almost a year now, and just kind of reminiscing about the past. And this is the first picture that everybody keeps thinking looks like me when I was young, but it's my mother. This is Clara Lou Lovell, and we're guessing that she's about 8 years old. Everybody keeps saying that she looks exactly like me, and I guess she kind of does. The same dark hair, the same teeth, and I am quite sure that the little dress that Mother is wearing was made by her mother, who would be my grandmother, because my grandmother was a wonderful seamstress and made most of my mother's clothes and Aunt Kay's clothes. Anyway, we're just kind of reminiscing this Christmas season. Mother and Dad are both living here in Allen. They live at a place called Twin Creeks, and Mother is in a memory care unit, and Dad lives there in assisted living. And anyway, things are winding down, and it's just nice to kind of go through some pictures and visit and tell stories. So we'll tell you some of the stories that we remember, but we don't remember very much.
This is a picture of me, Carl Ward, when I was a baby, and this is my mother, Ruby McCon. This is her. Then she became Ruby Ward and Ruby Yates when my brother was born, my half brother, Roy Yates. But this is my mother's.
Okay, so we've had this debate over who this might be. I thought it was my grandmother, so Dad's mother, but we're not sure. My grandmother, Dad's mother, died when I was 6 months old, and so we've only ever heard stories. It might possibly be an aunt. My father grew up in Delhart after moving and coming back, as he said. And then, so he lived with his mother and his grandmother, and that's pretty much his family. And then I'm not sure when Roy came around, but so anyway, we're not quite sure who this is. So it might be an aunt, and it might be my grandmother, but Dad didn't remember the picture.
What are the aunt's names
It could be Aunt May. We had an Aunt May and an Uncle Bud, and they lived in Delhart as well. And I know that my dad was really close to them. And I remember visiting their house and meeting them when I was younger. So, and hearing stories about them. But Dad at this point doesn't remember any of this very well. But anyway, so we just found these in my dad's envelope. So I know it's somebody from my dad's side of the family.
This is a picture of me as a small child, and I was born Carl Ward, and I was born in Dalhart, Texas, and lived the early part of my life in Dalhart, Texas. My mother was then remarried, and we moved to first to Louisiana, and then to down near Houston, Texas, where we lived near the coast. And then finally we moved back to Dalhart.
This is Jana Dorough, and I'm Shelly's sister, and I'm going to talk about my grandfather. This is a picture of my grandfather that actually it's the earliest one I can remember seeing.
Other than when he was a little boy.
Other than when he was little. I know there's some pictures of him playing baseball. Granddaddy loved baseball. His name was Kenneth Wesley. My grandmother always signed everything Mrs. K.W. Lovell, but that really wasn't his real name when he was born. He was Kenneth John Wesley, but his father later on in life remarried, and they had a son, and they wanted to name their son John, so he dropped the John from his name so that his half-brother could be John. So that's just kind of a little interesting fact about them. He was born, I believe, in 1901. I know he went to the University of Arkansas. He loved baseball. I remember Mother saying that, and I kind of vaguely remember when we were children, him taking us and watching even Little League games. Anywhere he went, if he saw a baseball game, whether it was a Little League game or a high school game or anybody was playing baseball, he would stop and pull over to watch the game. And I have memories of sitting and watching baseball games with him. He passed away when I was 5, so I don't have a lot of memories of him. Probably the memory I have that's the strongest in my mind is we used to go eat Mexican food at the J&R restaurant out at the lake at Dalhart. They had awesome sopapillas. I'm sure the other food was good too, but as a kid I remember the sopapillas. And after we'd eat at the J&R, Grandmother and Granddaddy would take us to the playground, and I remember him pushing us on the swings and watching us on the teeter-totter as we played at the lake.
Great.
This is Jana, and we think this is a picture of our Aunt Pauline, who wasn't really our aunt. She was my grandmother, Louise Lovell. It was her cousin. And the story is that Pauline's mother passed away when she was a baby, and her father wasn't able to take care of her. So my grandmother's grandmother, which would have been my grandmother's mother, went in a covered wagon up to Iowa to pick up Pauline, and she brought her home and raised her as one of her own daughters. She wrote a diary along the way, and my mother had it at one time. We were just discussing. We don't know what happened to it. But that's kind of how Aunt Pauline came to be with our family. She was quite a bit younger than our grandmother. I know my grandmother's mother, and I'm sorry I can't remember her name at this time, but she passed away when my grandmother was 18. So my grandmother and Louise kind of took over to finish raising Pauline. And there were times when Pauline lived with my grandmother, and they helped to raise her. That's all I can remember there. I did remember one more story about Aunt Louise. Aunt Pauline. It's actually about her father. He did later on come down and was living in Dalhart, and he lived on the farm, and they had animals. And this story is from Aunt Louise, who was grandmother's sister. And she had gone over to check on him because the storm was coming, and she found him in the kitchen on his knees praying for safety from the storm, and she got really mad at him because all the animals were just out and about in the field. He hadn't done anything to prepare or to take care of the animals. He was just on his knees praying about it. Aunt Louise was not much of a churchgoer. She didn't have a lot of faith. But she did live to be 104, so I don't know, there may be something to that.
All right, so this is the mystery woman picture. She was in the envelope with pictures of my mother. We really kind of don't know who she is. It might be my grandmother or my grandmother's mother. Maybe. Anyway, we know the picture's old, but we really don't know who she is. People should really put the names on the back of pictures, and the date would be helpful too.
Hello, this is Sarah Fryer, and this is a picture of my grandmother, Clara Lou Ward, who is on point in a butterfly costume. As I grew up, I always remember grandmother talking about how she used to be a dancer, and that's very special to me because I'm a dancer. I'd never actually seen any pictures of her dancing until very recently. I have one framed on my bedside table of her tapping. And that's just very special because I feel like it's something that we have in common and that we share.